This is absolute divine intervention that's happening right now. It's undeniable.
Listening to God's voice will cost you.
Yes.
And not listening to God's voice will cost you even more.
We run in there and he says, call code, call code. And I just lost it.
I'm just convinced the anointing comes from the disappointing. That the people who are most anointed that I know, they've gone through many disappointing seasons and heartache.
And her words were, the biggest tragedy of this entire situation would not be Cadence dying because she's going to go to heaven. The biggest tragedy would be through all of this, you losing your faith.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Formed by Jesus podcast. This is my favorite part of seasons because this is season 8 on prayer, and we're now in the mode of interviewing people from our church and just talking about different stories of different elements of the prayer practice. And today I'm excited because actually we usually don't do this. I'm recording this in the middle of our practice because I was able to talk to our guest who is new to the podcast, Jonathon.
Yeah.
Say hi.
Hello. Happy to be here.
And we had just chatted on Sunday about week number 2, which was discernment, discerning God's heart, hearing his voice. And so I'm excited to hear Jonathon's story. I'm excited for you to hear it as well. We've been trying to get you on the pod. I've been like, so enjoy our conversations we have together.
Yeah.
And I've always been saying at some point we'll get you on the pod.
Yeah.
And so here we are.
Yeah, finally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Excited to be here.
And you are a listener.
Yes, every single one. It took me a while to catch up, but I finally caught up, made it all the way through from the beginning.
Nice.
And now I look forward to them every week coming out. I fell behind in the past few weeks, but I caught up again. So
yeah, amazing. Do you do Spotify or YouTube?
So I do YouTube.
Cool.
For this. I do like podcasts are usually through Audible, but this isn't on Audible, so I actually it's worth deviating from my routine to still listen to it.
Gotcha. Yeah, we only do Spotify, and I haven't. Maybe we're on Apple. I don't think we are. So
yeah, well, you know me, Android guy.
Honestly am pushing people to YouTube, so it's working.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. First of all, you have been at our church. Oh gosh, I'm so bad at this because sometimes when I really make a relationship with someone, it's like it's been forever, right? But would it be a year this summer?
Yeah, fall. It's not September I think was the first time we came to Passion Creek. Yeah, and just fell in love with just everything about it. And and as I've told you and a few people before, actually, we found Passion Creek via Heart Cry, and it happened to be the day that you were subbing in and preaching, and my wife Bailey and I said, I like this guy. Where is he at? And followed you back to Passion Creek. So
we have a few people like that.
Yeah,
you're not the only. And Heart Cry is always happy to do that. So they love that story too. So hey, let's get into your story a little bit. So who are you? I know we're gonna kind of go through this journey. So you kind of take it how you want to begin, and then I know some of the tent pegs along the way that I want to make sure we address. But.
Yeah, just for the sake of time, I'll skip the early years, but I think it's probably good to start with that. My faith from a pretty young age was fairly strong, and I was very fortunate to have grown up in a household that was Christian, and I always had that influence in my life, right, of living like Jesus, and it was interesting though because I say my faith was strong, but we were very nomadic in our religions.
Okay.
So born actually LDS, and I was super young, so I don't have any memory of those years, but. Then went to Catholic, and then through the years jumped between so many Lutheran, Protestant, Foursquare, Southern Baptist, all
theological
over.
mutt, man.
Yeah,
you went to Seton, right?
And
high school?
I did. Yeah, went to Seton Catholic High School here in not here in Chandler, but close by in Chandler. Yeah,
yep.
Grew up in Arizona most of my life, and funny enough, like Catholicism actually kind of became my core. Through junior high and high school, having been in the Catholic school system, it was just easy to align. And I'll definitely talk a little bit more about that through our story. But the interesting thing is that, like, I've always had that, like I said, faith backing. So with that kind of said, that does not mean that it's been the same and solid all the way through life, right? So to fast forward to kind of where the story starts, I got married 2009, and very quickly after, my daughter was born. Not too quickly, to be clear, but yeah, quickly after, about a year later, my daughter was born. And a few months after that, we find out, and I'm 23 years old, young, new parent, got married pretty young.
Yep.
And found out that my daughter had a brain tumor, and was born with it. So, man, the way life just turns, right, when that kind of news hits you.
How many months was she when you found out, or was it right away?
She was 5 months old.
Okay.
Yeah, and we found out because at 5 months old, and I didn't know for sure, but I'm like, she still can't hold her own head up. Like, that doesn't seem right. And took her for an MRI, and we find the tumor. So life is just a whirlwind, and I'm just, I don't know how the world works. I don't know how healthcare works, insurance, all this, right?
Yeah.
Learned quickly. I'm still not an expert, but if anyone needs advice, so man, have I lived through it. So we found out that, there was a treatment plan that we could do in Dallas, but they didn't really specialize in the type of cancer she had. So my wife at the time and I were just, trying to figure out what was best. While this is all happening, we're going through these medical expenses and things are just piling up, and I'm making very little money at the time. And by the way, I forgot to skip. We had moved to Dallas at this point. So we were actually living in Dallas, Texas. I had just gotten promoted at my job at Southwest Airlines and making very little money. Amazing company, though. In fact, one of the things that actually happened while we were trying to figure this all out is we got a bill for $14,000 for an MRI because it was very unique and special MRI. I didn't have this money, and it wasn't being covered by insurance, and I was freaking out. And my manager at the time, also a very solid, devout Christian man, who became a role model in my life, he said, don't worry about it. I'll cover it for you.
Wow.
And I was just, whoa, this is like beyond generous. And also, I'm also not one who likes accepting help. And man, through these years, I had to really get good at that. So anyway, had just the most amazing support around us there in Dallas, but she was not getting the care she really needed. So we were kind of searching for answers here, right? And one of the things to take a quick pause that I want to kind of talk about is, we talked about discernment last week, right? Yeah. On Sunday. And discernment, in hindsight, I didn't realize how much I was having to do it, right? And so being a person of faith, I knew, I was praying, right? And I was trying to understand, what is God telling me in terms of this really hard time in our life? What do I do? And you never had really studied, despite all the years of private school and private education classes, and never had really gotten a clear understanding of how do you discern what God is actually telling you in all these prayers, right? So anyway, so I found this interesting to think back after your sermon on Sunday, to think through, when you set the stage for what my life was about to, and by the way, this is still happening, as some of you know, so more to come on this story. But that's where this past Sunday when you were, preaching, it hit me in hindsight, looking back at how much discernment in my life was just such a massive part of what happened and why it happened. And
God gently guiding you.
Yes. And sometimes not gently. Sometimes, and I'll get to that, sometimes not gently.
You're
at all.
Sometimes there's a sheepdog, brother.
Yes, exactly. And also the fact that the ABCs I thought were really a fascinating just way to look at it, and because I actually totally align and believe it. And then also Elijah's story, and just how much I could identify with Elijah's story. So that's kind of the framework as this story now goes forward. Yeah. So with that said, so we're in Dallas, and going to that first point of what do we do, I get a random call out of the blue from Amazon in Seattle, Washington, saying, "Hey, we looked at your LinkedIn and we're interested in interviewing you."
So they reached out to you.
They reached out to me.
Wow.
I was
already
looking for a job.
God's hand.
Bingo, exactly. It was already there strongly. It gets even crazier. So my wife at the time and I were we need to pursue this. Little did we know, just because financially we were strapped, and Amazon, just the money was massive compared to what I was making then. And she said, we're not moving. And I said, let's at least see what Seattle has in terms of treatment for her. big whoa moment. Seattle actually was the epicenter of research on her tumor. We didn't even know this at the time. So we were like, oh, we need to move to Seattle. And in this time, I had gotten the job offer from Amazon. They flew me out there, did the interview, offered me the job. Before we took it, we said, well, we need to understand like what financial assistance there might be. So we do our due diligence and talk to the social workers at the hospital. And they said, yeah, you do qualify for financial assistance, which we let through Dallas. We're like, well, that usually means you get like a 20% discount or something.
Yeah.
No. Seattle, they said, no, just when you qualify, it's all or nothing.
Wow.
So we are covering everything because they're so well funded by like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, et cetera.
Gotcha.
We're moving to Seattle, right? Like everything is just so strongly like this is obvious.
Right.
So we move out there and cutting edge like technology out there with cancer research for pediatrics. And after lots of treatments, they end up actually curing her at the time.
Wow.
Through proton radiation therapy. Back then, there was like 3 places in the world that had this, and 2 of them were in the U.S., 1 in Seattle, 1 in Houston. So amazing, right? Like we were just like, you could not even like begin to say, it was so obvious, right? Like God was just like, this is an easy path, maybe because of my age and God knows me and knew my heart. He's like, I need to lay this out very clearly for you. And it was.
So you knew right then, like in that moment, wow, look at God. This is insane.
Yes, exactly.
It's not even like hindsight a few years later.
Correct.
No,
in that moment, it was like, this is absolutely divine intervention that's happening right now. It's undeniable. So what you would think that would actually, this whole experience would solidify my faith. And it was weird actually what happened. And again, still Catholic at the time. And I don't want to say, bad things about, in general. However, I do want to, like, we just had an interaction where Cadence, my daughter, was...
Yeah, this one breaks my heart.
Yeah, she was, still going through her treatments. We still didn't know whether they were working or not because this was a long road and it wasn't clear. They gave her a 30% chance of survival back then, even with the treatments. So we're... in the Catholic faith, you go through your sacraments. It is very, very important to go through your sacraments. And so she was going through First Communion classes to get her first Eucharist. And because she was doing chemo, she was running late, and we showed up, and basically the staff at the church, even though we were 15 minutes late, said, no, we're not letting you in. And we got into this argument and said, she's a cancer patient. She was in chemo. Like, she is not well. Like, she needs to do these per the church's rules. She needs to do this.
Yeah.
And their response was rules are rules.
Oh.
And that shattered it should have just shattered my faith in religion. It shattered my faith in everything, to be honest, right? Like, I was angry beyond angry. And that was the start of me actually kind of falling away a little bit in terms of like the weakening of my faith. I still said I had it and it was still there, but it had gone dormant.
It makes total sense. I mean,
right.
That's just terrible.
So anyway, interestingly enough, fast forward, we were still living in Seattle and things were great. We loved our life out there and things were going really well.
Did you like the rain?
I actually did.
As Arizonans, we love it, right?
Yeah, I'm like, this is such a novelty. Like, what is this stuff? It's amazing. Yeah. Although I will say the last winter I was there, where there was literally no sunshine from October something until like April something, not a single day of sunshine.
I can't imagine that.
That got to me that last year.
Gotcha.
So anyway, this opportunity comes up for us to move to Florida. And this is actually kind of it's a funny story at first, and then it gets not funny. I wasn't listening to God. I wasn't really doing I wasn't praying. I really had this lull in my spiritual well-being at this moment. I decided that it was time for me to do something for me. And I wanted to go back Amazon was a rough place to work. And I'm like, you know what? I want to go back into the airline industry. And so I took my whole family out to Florida. No discernment, no prayer, no nothing. Just like, this is what I want to do. Let's go do it. Which is interesting because like Cadence is like, yeah, she's through her treatment and good, but we're leaving the very central location of like where all this research is, right? It was kind of a leap of faith, for lack of a better phrase. So we went to Florida, and boy, was it the most like, I do in hindsight, this was in hindsight, and God just telling us, you did not listen. You did not like, this was not the plan.
Yeah.
And I just kept thinking about like, interesting, like how Elijah did listen, right, and went everywhere that God told him to go, and here I am like saying, I'm going to take a detour on this journey, and I did, and went to Florida. 3-4 months after we moved there, Hurricane Irma hits.
Okay.
And I'm joking when I say this, but weird that God literally evacuated the entire state of Florida to prove a point that I wasn't listening.
Sure.
So, but yeah, we got there, and Hurricane Irma, and we were part of the largest, exodus of an evacuation in U.S. history.
Wow.
And I'm driving through the back roads of the Everglades of Florida because genius idea. Hey, let's avoid the main roads. Bad idea. That's where all the fuel is still going to be.
That's
almost run out of. Yeah, almost. I thought I was being smart. I wasn't. But like had this really scary experience. So like we have a Category 5 hurricane coming at us right now, and I'm going to get stranded on the side of the road with the family and the kids, and not able to get out in the middle of back roads. So that happens, and then and thankfully, like our house and everything, like there was damage, but we were fine. Get back home after our 2 weeks because there was no power, no water, anything. We get back, and I think it was a couple weeks later, we get an eviction notice from the HOA because we were renting, and the eviction, they were saying like, hey, we need to evict you because your company that owns your house is not doing their paying their things.
Wow.
Are you kidding me? Right. And then the school that the kids are going to basically refused the kind of like special like attention that Cadence needed because of some of her conditions, and basically said, no, we're not going to help. And like, we just had all of this, like, this was all within like 6 months. And we were just getting hammered with like, Florida's wrong, Florida's wrong, Florida's wrong. To make it even worse, right? At the time, like my marriage was just crumbling and it was not going well. So finally, my wife at the time said, I've had it. Like, either you're coming to Colorado with me or we're getting a divorce. So I like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to Colorado. I'm going to save this marriage, which of course, right. If you're, and I prayed about this a lot actually. So like I had kind of had this, my low in life, like with everything was going on in our lives, like even though Cadence was better, like my marriage was in shambles and I was just not in a good place at all. And so I started like, I might need to reconnect with God through this. Right. And that's how like, okay, God, like you've clearly shown me very harshly and very abruptly, I need to get out of Florida. Like this is not a good situation for us. So I really did feel like God was telling me, move to Colorado.
Yeah. And apologies for the dog. My family just got home. That dog should shut up soon. Keep going. Colorado.
The
real life.
I have dogs. I can tune it out.
Yeah, you can tune it out. Great.
So it's great when I was on a call with a CEO at work once, and my dog just started yapping like crazy. I'm like, this is awkward.
Yeah.
Okay. So being, like a Christian and following God and listening to God, right? Like, okay, things should get better, right? My life should I'm doing what God has told me to do. And I'm discerning that this is like his will.
Yeah.
So I should be good, right? And things should get better. I moved to Colorado and everything gets so much worse. Everything got worse, right? And it was interesting. And this goes back to kind of like, there is a cost, right? Like to discerning, and following what God's will is. There is a cost. And it's hard because when you're in the moment, it's like, this doesn't make sense to me. Like I'm doing what you told me to do. And my wife ended up leaving me anyway. I had to move jobs into a job that I didn't like, and it was miserable, like absolutely miserable job. COVID hits, and I was working in the airlines, and we had 5 days left of money, and I didn't know if I was gonna have a job much longer at the airline that I was at. And I'm just like, this is so much worse even, right? And I listened, and I was just really struggling, and because like I was really trying to bring like strength in my faith back, right? And I'm like, God, why are you doing this? And and there is like this element of like just despair and giving up, right? And just so beaten down. So, now I'm alone, living in an apartment. And I'm like, you know what? It's time for a change. And I start looking for jobs and find this job that's based in Phoenix, but they're going to let me stay remote because it's COVID. And, I apply and get this job. So great. So like, I at least can now like, change something up with my career because I was so miserable in that. And fast forward, and I wasn't even trying to like date at the time. Like, I need to just clear my space. But I was playing around on Facebook, and I randomly, clicked into the app one day, and I saw, well, it's this little heart icon, and I had no idea what it was. Open it up, and I'm kind of a nerd with technology, and I like just exploring things. And I was like, oh, it's a dating app within the Facebook app. What? This is weird. Yeah, well, that's what's interesting is because it knew I was single now. And Facebook, of course, knows everything about you. And it's like, oh, I'm single. To show me this now. Like, okay, this is weird and creepy, but hey, this is interesting. Let's check it out. I wasn't even seriously looking at like dating at the time, right? But I'm like, I'll just check this out. It was basically Tinder and Facebook, like swipe. And I'm like, okay, this is not my thing, whatever. Well, it just so happens to be that my future, wife was spoiler alerts. Yeah, jump to that. She had just broken up with someone, and she was out with some work friends, and her work friends were saying, well, let me date for you. And they were like for her swiping on people, and they swiped on me, and we did the whole match thing. And neither of us were intending to actually like date at all.
Yeah.
But through these like weird circumstances, connected, started talking, and I was like, well, I'm not really ready for this, but no harm in talking. And yeah, spoiler, we got married a while later. Now,
and she's wonderful.
She is
one of the
absolutely
drummers
wonderful
at our church, among other
yes,
things.
Yes, Bailey is absolutely incredible, and she actually plays into where this is going very strongly too. So anyway, for sake of time, I want to kind of jump into a crossroads that happened. And up to this point, like my discernment in all these decisions of how we go and where we go, like God had been pretty explicitly strong with me on like, I'm just laying the path for you. You just have to like see it right in front of you. And Florida, I'm very much showing you this was not where you were supposed to go. And even Colorado, like at the time, I didn't know why, like, did I end up in Colorado? And of course, like one of those reasons was absolutely like Bailey, without a doubt. I didn't know how much more there even was to come for the reason of going there. But I got presented this opportunity to, presented with this opportunity. I was getting forced. I was very, that was very corporate lingo. I was going to basically be forced to move to Phoenix through my job. And I was like, you know what, and this was where, Bailey and I, who is just the most amazing spiritual partner and really is a huge credit to helping mend a lot of my faith at the time and my belief. She and I, like together, kind of really stewed on and prayed on like, this job wants to take us to Phoenix. And I really don't think that like, that's a good idea. One, Bailey didn't want to move. Two, my kids are here, right? And I'm a divorce, and it's complicated, and I have the split custody situation. Like, I can't move to Phoenix. So I look for another job and get another job at this other company, HelloFresh, if you've ever heard of it.
Yep.
And I start working there and leave Carvana, which was the company I was with, and spoiler alert, still am with. But I left for a while to go to HelloFresh. And basically as soon as I left, like my old manager from Carvana kept saying like, hey, come back. And I'm no, I'm good. No, I'm good. You're making me move to Phoenix. No. And he said, no, we'll undo that. You don't have to move to Phoenix. So, I start like really not liking the job that I was being given at HelloFresh, and Carvana ended up saying like, hey, like we're going to sweeten the offer here.
Nice.
But we do need you to move to Phoenix. And they were going to promote me and all that. Okay. So I was praying, and this is where it gets really interesting in that, okay, we have everything that you would think about in terms of like, what is it to be a father, right? And what is it to be like what you would normally view as like the right thing to do, leaving your children in moving 800, 900 miles away. Like, how can that be the right thing to do? And it was really weird because like Bailey and I both kept, even though Bailey didn't want to move, and even though I had definitely not the greatest relationship with Colorado, we both kept getting this almost whisper, right? And you had said it, you need to move to Arizona. You need to move to Arizona. It's like, this is just the weirdest, like it's just contradictory to what you would think is the right thing to do. So we listened and we moved to Arizona. So, and the guilt that like riddled me was just strong, right? Like the moment we moved. And even though like, I feel like we're listening to what God was like, whispering to us to do, and like the way like everything just ended up working out, like to make it happen, I was like, okay, like he's clearly clearing the path for us to make this work. So we moved here to Arizona, and this was a year ago, and it's great. We love it. Like, and everything about it. I of course grew up here, but Bailey hadn't, and she was, loving it. Like as soon as we got here, despite hottest summer ever last year, and still loved it. So this sets the stage for where we are today, right? And like you said, I didn't know the motion, like things that were getting placed into motion, right? So I'm back at Carvana. I am back here in Arizona, which is at least familiar to me. I am far away from my kids. Found this great church called Passion Creek, which, having recently kind of had my healed, soul and healed relationship with God, I still needed something to help like really bring it together and have that framework. And little did I know how much this was going to play into the next chapter, right? So in January of this year, my daughter was, as many of you probably already know, she was re-diagnosed with cancer, and a very, very bad one. It's called RIGS, radiation-induced glioma. It is high grade, and basically they've given her a 6% chance of surviving this. And of course, like we've been through this so much already, right? And here we are again, but this time though chances are way worse. And here I am in Arizona, right, away from them, and
because you wanted to follow God's voice.
I did, yeah. And then so like I was just and have been like the roller coaster of things where it's like God, like I was so fragile for so many years, right, in my faith, and now here we are, right, and you led me here, and I'm just trying to like piece together like what is happening. Why did I misread it? Is this another Florida? Like what is going on? And I was just so beside myself with just anger is the number one that kept hitting me, and then despair and loneliness and all of this, right? Well, so first, to take a step back, talking about Colorado, that's where she is, right? Cadence and her mom are up there with my son, and we've been having meetings after meetings, right? And this has been just an awful, just process, and I'll kind of talk a little bit more about it, but there's every hospital all over the country and all over the world. They all you could have the best hospital, but that's such a there's no such thing as the best hospital. It's at what?
Got it.
And in this day and age, there's so many specialties, right? So is it the best at, even to say pediatric cancer? Well, that's too broad and ambiguous. Wow. So what Seattle Children's, for example, was the best at is they were the best at radiation therapy for high-grade gliomas and immunotherapy. So the very specific things that they were very good at. Colorado is the forefront in the country of targeted therapy, which is basically like chemo, but chemo that's super smart.
Okay.
Because they changed the genetic coding of the cells, and it's crazy. So God needed Cadence, I know this, to be in Colorado for what was to come. And at the time, I'm like, this makes no sense. She needed to be in Colorado. And we only found this out a few weeks ago that she needed to be there. Wow. So that the Colorado piece makes 100% sense. That still didn't answer the question, why am I here in Arizona though? Like, why am I away from her? And now we're traveling back and forth literally every other week between Colorado and Phoenix. I am like missing work nonstop to be in Colorado and to be at the appointments. I'm missing out on like my church, which is like, like supposed to be that foundation. And that's actually part of the point, that it's I've been praying and going through these waves of anger and resentment, but it's through all of this hardship of what's been happening, I've realized that, first of all, one thing a lot of people forget is like when you have someone in your family going through like some severe medical situation, there's three things that are going on in my mind, and I think in the big picture. Number one is, of course, like the care needed to help that person get healthy or whatever is needed to do what is needed for that person. Second, there is like the spiritual aspect to this, right? And just making sure that you're always like keeping context around like, what is this life for, right? And what is like the actual, which you have been a huge instrumental part for helping me with. The third piece is that those dynamics of the world don't stop. So for example, Cadence's health insurance is through my job, right? And I need to still have my job. I have great health insurance, thankfully. I need to be somewhere where I'm going to be able to like continue to keep that health insurance, right? Yeah. The provider, right? Cadence's mom had to quit her job just to be able to care for Cadence, right? So that leaves me as like, I've got to make sure I keep the money and the health insurance.
Metaphorical lights on, right?
Correct, exactly. And thank God that I am at a company that said, you do what you need to do. You have a job here always. You go to Colorado. Don't even worry about work. If you want to work, great. If you don't worry about it. And
which some of that's due to your leadership, and you and I nerd out about that
which
stuff.
I appreciate.
It's a lot of fun conversations.
It is fun. We'll definitely have to do that. Yeah. But the other like piece to this though is just, and I think that like by me getting back to Carvana, which is this place that is absolutely like family first, right? That was such a blessing. I didn't know, like when I was like, yeah, don't go to HelloFresh. Like this is a mistake, and go to Arizona, go to this job. But the other thing here too is, I had this moment, and let me kind of paint the picture. Are we good on time?
Oh, don't worry about time.
Okay.
We're great on time.
Okay. So
I can hear the listeners now. Quit mentioning time. We are in this.
Okay. So I'm going to just paint the picture of like the darkest hours of the last few months. And I will try to not cry. It's probably not going to work, but I'm try. So in February, I think it was, so Cadence was supposed to, we knew that this was bad, but we needed to do a biopsy to confirm like, what are we dealing with? So when we went in and Cadence got admitted, Cadence, my daughter, in case it didn't get connected, she got admitted into the hospital, like I think the last couple of days of January. So by the time we get to mid-February, they were able to do a biopsy. And so they went in, and as the doctors described to us, like this is a very non-invasive thing. It's very routine, and it's in a part of her brain that is very like low risk. And so we're going to go in and just get some samples. Cool. Anything but. It was awful. So, and remember, like she's about, or I didn't say this, but like they know that they're probably going to go and actually remove this entire tumor, which at this point had gotten a little bit bigger than like a large strawberry. So, but at this point they're like, let's just get a sample. They go in, they get it. A couple hours later, she comes out of surgery, is in the PACU as it's called. And she's recovering. Doctors and nurses like, yep, she's looking good. Let's get her out of here and back to her room. They start wheeling her out. And we're in this, I will never forget this hallway. And I had to walk it all the time afterwards. And it was awful every time. We're leaving into this hallway that is completely empty. And you're just going back to the elevator bank. And it's a long, I'm guessing about like a 70, 80 yard walk. And as soon as we're like at the halfway point from where we just came from, she starts seizing. And look at her face, and it's completely purple. And I yell because like they hadn't hooked her up to all of like the monitors because there was no reason to for this procedure. And the transport, who, by the way, normally the transport people who are not doctors, nurses, anything, they're also usually not even EMT certified.
Wow.
It just so happened that this one was. Just so happened. And he immediately saw what was happening. He turns the bed around. These are massive beds. Guy was strong, and is literally running back to the PACU and bursts through the doors. And we're running. Laura and I are running behind to try to keep up. We run in there, and he says, call code, call code. And I just lost it.
Yeah.
And we see a swarm of like 20 people like running at us, right? And I'm like, she's dead. Like, she's dead. And then I can't see because there's literally, again, like 20 people like surrounding her, and they asked us to leave, and we all said, no, we're not leaving. And they said, okay, that's fine. And then they assigned, this was amazing, they assigned someone to us to communicate to us exactly what was happening, which was like a touch I'd never even heard of. And that was so helpful. And so this person's telling us exactly what's happening. Keep in mind, right, like when we ran to PACU, none of these doctors or nurses or anyone knows what, like they have no idea who she is. They have no idea what's happening. They have no idea her history, that she's a cancer patient, nothing. So their whole thing, we need to get her breathing. And the part that just made me lose it, like we need to get her heart rate back. It's like, and I heard them yell for paddles, and I'm like, she's dead. And thankfully, and I'm going to get to like a really hard thing to say. Thankfully, in that moment, she was alive, right? She was alive. And they got her like stabilized and back and oxygenated and fine. And then the damage that they still, to this day, they still don't understand what happened. They still don't, which is scary. But the damage that the seizure had caused to her brain was actually pretty significant. And for weeks, I'm sitting we went to the ICU, PICU, as it's called, Pediatric Intensive Care Unit. Yeah. We're sitting in the PICU for weeks, and she is in agony, and like she's hallucinating things, and she's yelling at me like, the fire's coming, the fire's coming. And she's just like, she's in a terrible place. And I'm like, my heart is just breaking, like absolutely breaking, because like this girl has already been through so much in her entire life. Right. This is round 2. She already went through this as a young kid. So here we go, going through this again. And she's like now in agony, mental agony, because like she's hallucinating all these really scary, horrible things. Like she's not eating. She's, just everything is like going wrong. Everything's going wrong. I won't go down the list. Everything's going wrong. And this is just to get her to treatment, to battle the cancer. We haven't even gotten to battling the cancer yet, which is going to probably kill her. And I am sitting and watching all of this happen. And I started praying, like, God, and this is so hard to say, God, if she's going to survive this, please help her survive it. But if she's not going to survive this, please take her quickly. Yes. Which is the most, but that's love. Like, right. Because this isn't what it's, So anyway, the things get worse, right? And she gets an infection like in her brain, and she suddenly, like, her blood pressure gets out of control, and she starts, she completely loses all function on her left side. Left, right is hard. And I'm watching like what this 14-year-old girl is going through, and I'm like, what God would do this? Like, sure. Right. And this is where you absolutely, like, were just, and I don't know if like, you and I would talk every once in a while I was in the hospital, and I would just be like, I don't know what to do. I'm so angry. And you were the one who would tell me, like, it's okay to be angry. It's okay. And boy, was I. And so anyway, I remember I'm standing in the middle of the Denver airport, and it's just triggers, man. Triggers are just everywhere. And I'm watching, like, I don't know if you all have seen these. Oh man, I'm blanking on what it is, but there's these campaign signs, and they tend to feature people who have beaten cancer.
Okay.
And the Denver airport has one up, and it's showing this like 17-year-old girl who had conquered cancer. And I just got rage in me, and I'm like, well, I wish that was our story, but it's definitely not going to be. So anyway, I called Bailey, and I don't remember how it came up, but Bailey said something about, hey, like, since you're going to be back this weekend, let's go to church. And I said, absolutely not. And she said, like, why? And I just went off on this rant, on just like, I mean, basically this was the moment of like, my faith was broken and it was gone. And I said all these pretty awful things, and basically like a God that I want to follow will not do this to Cadence. And she said something to me that will haunt me in a good way for the rest of my life, that it just, I've never felt words like feel like a physical smack across the face like her words.
Yeah.
And her words were, the biggest tragedy of this entire situation would not be Cadence dying because she's going to go to heaven. The biggest tragedy would be, through all of this, you losing your faith. And that smacked me out of it. And I was like, you're right. That absolutely would, right? And just like the level of clarity that suddenly brought to me was just like, I needed it so badly at that moment. And so anyway,
that's kind of that's the whole, the voice isn't always a nice, gentle, was like, that was God.
Correct.
Slapping you in the face.
Slapping me. Yeah. And it's funny too, because like Bailey, I mean, she's an outspoken person, but that was even a little like, I mean, I think she was channeling like the voice of God there, right? Because it was like, this is kind of like somewhat unlike her to even say that to me so strongly and like with so much vindication. So anyway, so like here we are, right? And like, I know, and this story has not finished being written, right? We still are waiting for what the outcome of this is going to be for Cadence. But what I know too, going back to kind of like, well, why did we end up in Arizona too? You know, and then by the way, the kids love coming to Arizona, and Cadence is actually going to come out here 4th of July if her health holds, and because she just loves it out here too. But I do think that, you know, my faith has never been tested harder than it was in the past few months. And I've never felt more of a like solid support system in terms of like providing a framework for my faith than this church. And I do think that like, and even though like I'm not able to be here every week, like this church, Trey did not even know I was going to say any of this. He didn't pay me for the commercial, but I do absolutely think that like it was, you know, one, my job to enable us to provide. Two, it was to make sure that my faith was going to be protected through this, because it has to be. And by the way, for Cadence's sake, it has to be. I have to live like Jesus through this awful thing that we're going through for Cadence, for Cadence's own faith, right? And for her, like, to be right. And I'm making sure that as much as like the number of times, right, I've had to like pull on like the strength of God, like to get through a conversation with her, right? Like I can't get through those conversations with just my own strength. I can't. I need more that I can't give, and no one can give me except just pulling on the grace of God to get me through this conversation with her. And I'm always able to, and in a way that like lifts her, even though I'm telling her like the truth and the bad news, but we're going to be through this together. And just the reminder that like, you know, that your faith in Jesus is what is going to make this all, whether it's this year or whether it's 20, 30, 50 years from now. Yeah. That's what this life is about. Right. And that's something that you helped remind me that I'm now helping remind Cadence. So the Passion Creek community, unbelievable outpouring of support for us, like just on a people level. But then the faith, like protection, I think that I'm actually getting is, and Bailey for that matter too, because poor Bailey she's going through something, right? In the sense of like, she's the stepmom, right? And she's sitting up there for hours a day in this small room with my ex-wife there. And we're all like having to come together as this
a lot of dynamics,
unit, a lot of dynamics, right? And, anyway, it's been if I go back and I look at Elijah's story to kind of tie this up a little bit.
You are doing really good. I was
never done this before.
You're killing it.
And I think it's just so interesting that like if you look at like just the oversimplified, keep me honest if I botch any of this. But, God basically says like, Elijah, go out to the wilderness. And by the way, I'm going to take care of you, which that was the entire like, that was Dallas. That was Seattle. It was not Florida because I didn't listen. It was Colorado. It's Phoenix, right? Wandering the wilderness. And then it's interesting too, because I went after you said like, go read it. I did actually listen to you. And I went, and then so like he goes out into the wilderness, and then he comes back to the widow who takes care of him, right? And who doesn't have a lot, which is something that like there's so many people who have given us, whether it's financial support or any other, like the many other kinds of support that you can give people who need it. Like they don't even have much to give, but they give whatever they can, like just like the widow to Elijah. And then interestingly, and this part is where I really struggled, because I was like, oh, cool, this parallels my story. And then you get to the widow's son.
Right.
And I was like, oh. And that hit, and here's why it hit, because, and I'll make this brief. When Cadence had her tumor actually removed surgically, the doctor was like, I got all of it.
I wondered when you're going to bring that up, because I remember you called me right after, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is really good news.
This is really good news. And then we came crashing down, because from the moment that she had her MRI to the moment they removed it was about 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And in that 2 weeks, little did they know, it had metastasized to her entire brain. But we didn't know that yet. So he got the tumor out and said, I didn't see any more. This is great news. There's going to be treatment still, but things look good.
Yeah.
And so I got inflated up on this pedestal, as you saw, like, because I called you, I got my hope really high. Just to have it smashed down again for the doctors to come back.
24 hours later?
Yeah, it was exactly after her MRI. So probably about 48 hours. Yeah, very quickly. And just got it smashed down. And it was so much even more painful. So much more painful.
Right, like it was worse to hear that good news.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Like I wish I'd never heard it. And so then like, I'm like, oh, this, parallel is so fascinating with the story. And then I get to like, Elijah, like basically Elijah cured him.
So in 1 Kings 17, that same widow who helped supply, now the son dies, and the woman's like, you man of God, like what is going on here? Yeah. And he goes and lays on top of the boy and brings him back to life.
Yeah, that upset me.
Sure.
And it upset me because like here I am paralleling my experiences to Elijah, and then that hit home too close. That was like, no, because I'm going to reject giving any hope in this. And I do. And this is a hard thing, I think, with a lot of people, is a lot of people will tell me like, and I'm not open. This is the most open I am. Like, particularly it's just you and me, so it's easier, even though who knows how many people watch this,
exactly.
But I'll ignore that. But like, I don't tell a lot of people like the true nitty gritty things that are going on in our life with Cadence. But one thing, one thing that was like really hard that people have told me is, you need to believe that she's going to be healed. You need to like believe like, and I push back hard. And one of the people used to be my mom who would say this, by the way. And it's like, no, absolutely not. Like what I need to do is like understand first and foremost that like, it's not about this life, right? Which is like what you have been very well telling me and it's helped me so much. But also that, like address reality of what this is, right? And the doctors are very pessimistic that she is going to live this life for much longer. And it's awful to hear that. And people don't want to hear that. And I understand, I get it. Like even being adjacent to this situation, like a lot of people, unfortunately, and I've seen it, have like distanced themselves from me and Bailey because it's just so much. I don't blame them. I do not blame them at all. Right. And those who don't distance themselves, like, thank you so much to all of you, including everyone at this church. Because it is hard. It's awkward. What do you say to someone like who's going through it? You don't
start with,
right?
How are you doing?
Right.
You know, yeah.
Right, exactly, yeah. But it's a natural thing to start with.
Right.
And unfortunately, like as I've been worn down over the past few months, I don't have a filter to say, yeah, everything's good.
Right.
Because it's not. And I'm not afraid to say it anymore. But I do think that that's one of the things where it's like one thing is, you know, the cost, right? That going back to like the cost of following, like I've been most of my life faithful and to varying degrees. And I think there's, and you've talked about it a lot, like the road as a Christian is not easy. And in fact, it can be harder. Right. And there's something that I came to realize through one of our small group talks. This was actually relatively recently. And I had not been going to a small group very much just because I'm an introvert. Mm-hmm. I can play extrovert, but I'm an introvert. And with everything
plus you've been traveling.
And plus traveling and all that, right? But I started going again. And it's funny because like the ones I started going to again, like, whoa, like they're hitting big time. And we were talking about, you know, like, I forgot the prompt, but basically like, are you at a season of like feeling like exhausted and tired and beaten down, all that, right? That question. And I talked through with the group, and it was interesting because I realized that Jesus is where we go to find like our comfort and our peace, right? Which is 100% true. The amount of energy and focus and attention that is required to keep yourself grounded to that is immense. Because I think like, and I don't want to speak for anyone, but definitely for myself as a control freak and wanting to, you know, like feel like I can control the future and destiny, which I know I can't, but I have to keep telling myself that. But I just naturally, if I just lazily think about it and just like don't actually actively just focus, I think that I can like control this and I can change the outcome, whatever. And once I do focus so hard on this is out of my hands, there is so much peace to that. But I have to constantly remind myself and just think about that constantly, or else.
Which is why Jesus says, my yoke. A yoke is still something you have to attach yourself to. Yeah. It's still something you have to carry and walk. And so, it's a lie of like, oh, I believe in Jesus, now everything's fine. No, it's still a yoke, which is what you're naming. Yeah,
exactly. But I have to say that, like, you know, despite like this life as a Christian, right, and as a believer, like, and we all have our stories, right? We all have them. My life has been very hard. It has, right? And despite like being faithful, and I think that it's really important for everyone to like acknowledge that, you know, we're not going to have easy lives as Christians. It doesn't vindicate us of this world and all of the evils of it. It definitely gives us the ability to like thrive in our spirituality through it, though, right? And that's what I'm trying so hard for this whole situation to bring, is like at least make me a better, stronger person through this, to be able to be there for others as well. And through Cadence's story, like, hey, like bad things happen. And they're going to happen. They're going to keep happening. Try to like live like Jesus wants us to live, and let that be a message. Because if I can, as a dad of a 14-year-old going through this or awful thing that I kind of talked about, and I can still come out of this like strong in my faith, as Bailey so very strongly pointed out to me as being very important, that in itself is such a strong testimony. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's hard, right? Like it is so hard. And like the amount of times that I snap at people now, and the amount of times, and I see myself like, what was that? Who are you? And just like becoming bitter and all that. I see it and I fight it, but it takes so much active fighting because that is not Christ-like, right? That is that does not pass the ABCs here of like what I'm doing. So I just have to like say like, just know that like, it's not always easy. And also know that like, just because your faith is strong too, it doesn't mean that it's not going to stay it's just given that it's going to stay strong. Like, you have to fight for it constantly.
A couple scriptures that come to mind. One is 2 Corinthians 4. And I think you're naming this, and it's your experience, but the scriptures speak to this. Paul says, we are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. We are persecuted, but not abandoned. We are struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry the death of Jesus in our body, so that the life of Jesus may also be displayed in our body. For we who live are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that Jesus' life may also be displayed in our mortal flesh. So then, death is at work in us, but life in you. So it's like, I'm carrying this burden, but it's actually also, thankfully, it's used for the sake of others to be built up. But then later in verse 16, therefore we don't give up, even though our outer person is being destroyed. Our inner person is being renewed day by day. And this doesn't feel like it, but you mentioning the eternal perspective is so key. For our momentary light affliction, and it's only that because is producing for us an absolutely incomparable eternal weight of glory. So it's only momentarily light because in light up when the scales of what's coming. So we do not focus on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal.
That's powerful. Yeah.
And those are just some of the spiritual principles you're naming from living it.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think about in Matthew 7, because Jesus talks about those who hear the word and do it, it's like the house built on the rock versus the house built on the sand. And what a lot of people miss is the storm hits both houses.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not like, oh, if I build my house on the rock, which is mean you're hearing the word and you're practicing the way of Jesus.
Yeah.
You're still going to get hit and it's going to rock you.
Yeah.
But you're not going to, you won't lose your faith. You will still withstand.
Yeah. And
you'll actually be stronger at the end.
Yep. Yeah. You're forged. You and I talk a lot about like forged as a leader, but you're also forged just as a Christian and forged as a believer and a disciple. Like it's, another point of those things when you said, like these verses and like these are things I grew up with, right? And going to private school, I always we're studying these verses, and it's so interesting how like as a kid and even as an immature believer and Christian, it's you hear it and it doesn't hit.
Yeah,
it doesn't until you go through life. And I think that's one of the interesting crossroads in front of us at every trauma, at every disaster, is you can either lean in on what and some people haven't heard their whole life, but like for those of us who have and have heard these stories and about the houses and the cornerstone and all that, you can lean in on it and actually gain understanding through what is actually happening to you, or you can abandon it because, well, like this shouldn't be happening to me or to whoever, and I'm out.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm choosing actively to lean into it. And again, it's concerted effort and conscious effort. But I think so much like we hear all these things about like the trials and tribulations of a Christian. It's like, yeah, I've heard this. Okay, live it. And then like, and reflect on it, and it will have such a deeper meaning than it ever did.
Yes. And we said to tie in Sunday, I said, listening to God's voice will cost you.
Yes.
And not listening to God's voice will cost you even more.
Exactly. Yes.
So like, and you're even saying the Florida thing, it's like that cost me even more because I wasn't listening.
Yeah.
And yet there's grace. But
yep.
Yeah, that's so much part of the play too. I was gonna mention something else, but I forgot. Shoot. I hate when that happens to me.
Yeah.
You haven't done that this whole time.
Which I'm amazed, because usually I am like,
look at the Spirit
it's
of
like
God.
Scattered. Yeah. Yeah. No, I said a little prayer on the way over here, like just please just keep me like on track.
Yes. Oh, I was thinking of another one. So in John 6, Jesus actually is very confronting to these huge groups of disciples because they're following him because he's giving out bread, feeding the 5,000.
Yeah.
And then he goes, okay, eat my flesh, drink my blood. And it makes everybody mad and they go away. And then he goes to the 12 and he goes to Peter and he's like, do you want to go too? Go ahead. He's like, you don't have to keep following me.
Yeah.
And I just love that about him as a shepherd.
Yep.
And Peter's line is, Lord, to whom else would we go?
Yeah.
And I think that's something, as I hear your story, I think what's also helped sustain your faith is, what's another option?
It's not good. that other option is not good.
Yeah, resentment and bitterness may feel good in the moment, but you're just poisoning yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, not having a God at all is way worse than having a God that you're mad at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yep, yeah. And it is like you told me, it's okay to be mad at God, but don't turn away from Him, like, because And I think being mad at God is part of that conversation. Like, it is a relationship, right? And you have. It struck me when I don't know why it struck me weird, but in your sermon when you were saying like God was looking for a friend, I never thought about, why does He need a friend? He's God, right? And I've been stewing on that a little bit too. It's like, okay, well, if that's true, like true friends will always like be able to get mad at each other, right? And all that. So that dynamic kind of hit home, like, okay, it's okay, but just don't let that overshoot the point and just turn away completely, right?
I just think though, I think anger with God, you can't go around it, you have to go through it.
Yes, that's
so
a good way
it's
to put
like
it.
The Psalms. I mean, some Psalms will make you blush when you read like this is a really angry prayer to God and honest. And it's not saying necessarily that those things are all good, but it's just true to the human experience. These are emotions that I'm feeling. Like, one of them is so angry at the oppressors. This is called imprecatory Psalms. They're so mad at their captors, the Babylonians taking them over. They say, "Blessed is the one who dashes their babies against the rocks."
Wow.
What that is they're mad.
Yeah.
And they're like, I hate these people so much. Can someone take their baby and kill them?
Yeah.
Now, is that righteous? No, but that is an honest feeling.
Yeah.
But I think, again, we don't go around, we don't skip it, we have to go through it. And that's what I love about the Psalms. They're not always prescriptive, meaning this is what you should do.
Yeah.
It's descriptive. This is what happens when you're walking and talking with God. And so it records reality of our human experience.
Yeah. And that's really, I'm glad you said that, because that's kind of a really, it grounds us, I think, if we acknowledge like the reality of how like these images are depicted, right? And like we can relate to that so well, and I know I can with what is going on in our lives right now. So absolutely, the realities depicted in the Bible, I almost want to like go through and do a study of like, where are we seeing glimpses of what you wouldn't necessarily think is like an alignment of like, I think what you said, like prescriptive, right? Like, we always think the Bible is so prescriptive, but like it might be really interesting, like you said, to do a descriptive study of like, where are we actually getting some insights into like how people are actually reacting and feeling.
Because even like, it's not prescriptive when it talks about, King David having multiple wives. It's just describing him.
Right.
And this was sin.
Yeah.
But so it's like, oh, David had wives, so I can have multiple wives at the same time. It's like, no, this is just describing. It's not prescribing.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share to the story?
Not really. It's just, I thank you for all the prayers, and this is still an ongoing thing. And I just appreciate the church's support now.
Well, I do want to say a couple things. One is, I actually am moved by this thought that you realize I just need to address reality. And I think you've seen this. I think Jonathon talks about it, like, or is it Viktor Frankl? Like, actually, there's an optimism that destroys people. You have to be realistic. You have to go like, okay, we all will die. So I need to keep that in mind.
Yes.
I need to, so like, to me, it's actually, you're having faith by having, actually, Dallas Willard calls faith as having a grasp of reality. Now, we believe God can change reality. But I just want to tell you, I think our job as a church is to have faith for you as well. Like, I think you are in a job and a role with your child, with Cadence, to deal with reality and to love her in that moment, and not have so much fake optimism, right?
Yeah.
But I think about like the friends who lowered the paralytic from the roof. I think about Jesus just talking about having an environment of people who can actually have faith for you, and so I think it's our job, and I just call our people just to pray for Cadence, to pray for healing. I was really moved. I won't mention the lady's name because I didn't ask her permission, but there's someone at our church who said twice now she was given a 0% chance to live.
Wow.
And she was talking to us on Sunday.
Wow.
And so there's stories like that. And again, we hope and we pray and we labor for those. knowing the ultimate hope is the resurrection, is the next life. But I think it's our job. I also just want to thank you. You're modeling what we kind of said at the end of this Sunday sermon is floating, not swimming. And I just want to thank you that I think you've been successful in your life, like as far as in your workplace, and you're organized, you work hard. So like, show me how to swim, I'll swim. Like, I think that's your personality, and you're such a hard work ethic. You'll get that done. But I've been so encouraged by your ability to just take a step back. You've done, I mean, you have a therapist, you've had community around you. You've done so many right moves, but it's been the like, I'm not in control.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to float, just have my hands out and say, God, what is today's next right thing? And so I just want to thank you for modeling that.
Thank you.
I can go on and on, but I'm just really moved by your love for people, the way you've carried this. It's just been inspiring to me in so many ways. And so you're a blessing to our church.
Thank you.
And I'm really grateful for you. I do remember this, and this was before January. So this was before we had the bad news. But I remember like in November, you and I were talking, and you had asked that question, like, why Arizona? You know, like, shouldn't I still be in Colorado?
Yeah.
And I remember selfishly thinking, well, it's because you have to be at Passion Creek. And I made sure not to say it out loud. But I was like, because God called you here, man. And
well, come to find out.
You know, but I just love that you're kind of saying that as well. But like, you're saying it from the standpoint of like us being able to serve you, and what a joy. But I love the mutual, like, you have been such a blessing to us, and you've been a blessing to our church. And even this last Saturday, labeling things to help us with our setup process. Like, it's so mutual, you know, and I love how that's how the kingdom works. Even I'm going to stop preaching, but even the Elijah and the widow story. Elijah, this great man of God, who supports him? A widow who's poor. So the widow actually gets the privilege of saying, I may not have all these things, but I'm providing for you. Like, it's just amazing in the economy of God. Yeah. You know, and so.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because one other thing too, and related to Elijah's story too, and also what you're saying, you know, there's a lot of like, just even in the, oh my gosh, the word slipped me. It happened to me. But like, even in just the, what's the like non-spiritual world, like day to day, anyway. So like day to day in society.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, like there's this whole like you know,
secular world.
Secular, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. You're good assist.
Yep.
In the secular world, like there is like rooted, you know, in I think the teachings of Jesus, the whole like treat others as you want to be treated and all that. And what has always been important to me, you know, in my later years as I went through what I went through, I've always believed in kindness is so important to me as a person. It's so, and it is sometimes trying and hard. I am a little bit of sometimes a hothead, but I absolutely want to be known as like kindness is one of my virtues. Yeah. Now, where this gets interesting too is I have always, you know, acknowledged like this is what I've gone through, what I'm going through, and I have no idea what your story is. Your story. I think there's so many of us out there, and we all have stories. We all have our trials that we've been through, right, that have shaped us. Yeah. And
you've never diminished other people's sorrow.
Never. And I never will, right? Mm-hmm. And to that point, right, so many people will say to me, understandably, you know, when I ask them how they're doing, it's almost awkward because they're like,
I can't complain.
I can't complain compared to, right? Like, yes, you can. You absolutely can. Like, because I'm going to say something. What I'm going through, like, is I have an incredible, like, I've had an incredible life with my daughter and my family. I have an incredible wife who's keeping me on track and grounded. I have an incredible church who is absolutely supporting me. I have an incredible job that pays me incredibly well and makes me afford all of this. And I have no worries about my employment. I have a good relationship with my ex-wife that this could be so much worse if I didn't. True. Right? Like, I have so much going for me that the other people who I see in the hospital around me are in such worse, dire conditions than I'm even in. You can always find someone in a worse spot than you. Yeah. You can, which some people hear and like, it can't get much worse than you. Oh, it can. It absolutely can. And especially like first and foremost, above all, I have faith that like it's this next life that matters. It's our eternal life. It's not this doesn't really, like, it does matter. And this gets back to the point where in this belief of like living like to be disciples, not attenders, right? That hit me hard in that, like, I can actually channel this into actually being like part of my creed of faith, that I actually am living this way of caring for people and wanting to be a supporter of others, in acknowledging that I don't know what your story is. I don't know what you've been through, but I'm going to treat you as a disciple of Christ would anyway. And I'm not necessarily going to explicitly say that at work, because then I'll get in trouble, but I will absolutely live that way. And everyone, of course, knows that I am, you know, a Christian and a follower.
Yeah.
And it will align to like, wow, you're going through all of this and you're still behaving this way. And it's not me. Like, it's I can't do this without the grace, right? And without the strength that I'm given through
Galatians 2, it's Christ in me, the hope of glory.
Correct, right?
Absolutely.
And yeah, sometimes I fail at that, but I do think that has helped like solidify and affirm in me that like this is an important thing for me. So like out there, like I hope I never cross anyone like at the church, right, wrong. And it's not as much as like, oh, I care what you think of me. It's that I want to make sure that I'm always like living in that way, right? That is this praising, like, you know, the life of Jesus and what he wants us to be. So,
and I think it's worth mentioning, you and I, we can literally always go on forever.
Yeah.
I've never been, we're like, I don't know what else to say to this guy. So it's always like, okay, we have to move on.
We could go another 4 hours, but yeah.
But 1 Kings 19, after all these amazing things that God does in and through Elijah's life, he's then depressed and wants to die. I think it's really important that that's in chapter 19, not chapter 16. So like,
interesting.
We need to remember that maturity doesn't mean you won't have really dark days and angry days. Elijah was like done with God in 19, and he called down fire from heaven.
Yeah.
But then after the death threat, he's like, please take my life.
Yeah.
And then God ministers to him again by providing water and food enough for him to go 40 days to Mount Horeb. And up at Mount Horeb, which, by the way, is the same mountain where God gives Moses the 10 Commandments.
Oh, wow.
So he's going to the same mountain going, I know my tradition. I know my faith. God, I need a word from you, and I need something spectacular. But he's not in the fire. He's not in the earthquake. He's not in the wind.
Yeah.
It's in the still small voice. It's in the whisper. And he's gentle and he's kind, and he loves Elijah, and he loves you, and he loves me, and he gives us just enough to keep going. And so I think I'm encouraged by that this great Elijah had dark days even after his great days.
Yeah.
So I think that's worth mentioning. And I love that you're able to find purpose in the midst of this pain. I think, so my barber, who also has a daughter who had battled cancer and is a survivor and is doing well now, but I had mentioned you to him because of just the connection there. And I'm really good friends with my barber. And something I told my barber one day, and he holds on to it. He tells me every time I get my hair cut. I told him, I said, hey man, I think God has such a big plan for your life, because I'm just convinced the anointing comes from the disappointing. That the people who are most anointed that I know, they've gone through many disappointing seasons and heartache. But when they stay firm and keep leaning in, there's just this beautiful power that flows forth. And I just see that in your life already, and I pray for that even more. But even the barber was like, I told him your name and Cadence, and he goes, did you say Bailey? And I said, I did not say Bailey. Remember this?
Yeah, I remember the story.
And I'm
crazy.
Like, what are you talking about? And he's a Christian. And he goes, I thought you said to pray for Bailey. I was like, well, that's his wife. So yes, pray for her as well. So just these little moments of God's sovereignty, of God at work. So thank you. We value you. We love you, man.
Thank you.
You are somebody I'd love to have on the podcast again sometime.
Absolutely.
But hey, we didn't even hit the record, but we're close. Hour and 14.
Hour 14. Okay. I'm proud of us.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
Did it. Thank you again, though. I feel like what you shared was from the heart, and that was a hard thing to do, and I'm just really proud of you. Now, I think you know the rules. Comment something down below.
Oh man, I wasn't ready for this.
So one phrase, probably make it lighthearted or something
cancer will not be the word.
Right. What is one phrase for the people to prove down below that they listened to this whole thing?
Don't move to Florida.
Yes, I love it. Don't move to Florida. Put that down below.
No offense, Floridians.
Yeah,
no offense.
I love it. You can visit Florida.
It's a great place to visit.
I love it to visit. But all right, grace and peace, guys. We'll see you on the next one.